Mr. B in that old trophy case. Number 4 we're still waiting for, well, bring on the chase. Out on the field at Mile High, Broncos win is our desire. Coupled with Breck, Brew and a friend, bleed orange and blue to the bitter end. Come and join us, DNVR. We are DNVR.
Welcome into the DNVR Broncos podcast on this wonderful Wednesday, this whiteboard Wednesday. I'm your host, Zac Stevens, joined by my man, Andrew Mason. Before we hop into the show, got to tell you a couple of things. If you're joining us on Twitter or Periscope, make sure to hop over to YouTube. You get a better stream there. The chat's more fun, helps us out more. If you're on YouTube, please hit us with a like. If you're joining us live, we would really, really appreciate it. Subscribe, turn on alerts so you know every time that we go live. And also, I got to tell you about our presenting sponsor, MSU Denver Online. We're over at MSU Denver Online. They'd put a dynamic education at your fingertips without forcing you to decide between earning a degree and living your life. MSU Denver is the Colorado institution that provides rigorous and affordable online programs taught by professors who bring the real world into the classroom so you can continue to live your life while continuing to get that education. So check out all of the classes that they have going on over at MSU Denver Online. My boy, Mase, what is shaking, my friend?
Hey, as Von Miller would say, howdy.
Yes, he would.
Semi-appropriate to bring up Von Miller today since we're talking about his edge rushing compliment, Bradley Chubb. And also, it's interesting to bring up Von Miller in talking about Bradley Chubb because if Chubb misses the next 4 games, he will have missed as many games to injury in just 4 seasons as Von Miller has in 10 going on 11 seasons.
Oh, man. And Mase, that just really puts it into perspective. And he's going to miss the next 4 games. Of course, news breaking from Bradley Chubb himself yesterday that he is going an arthroscopic procedure to remove bone spurs in his ankle. He already had this procedure done on the other ankle earlier this year. Now he's having it in the ankle that's been bothering him for the past couple of weeks. Mase, right now there's no time frame for him. We'll hopefully find out more today after the procedure's done, but the way that Bradley's talking about it, that sources are talking about it, and the conversations I've had is they're viewing a return this year, which to me says they're not looking at a short 3-week absence. Yeah. They're not even looking at an 8-game absence to bring him back after the bye. They're looking really at the back end of this season for him to come back, and boy, that is just brutal.
Yeah, it depends on the nature of the Spurs, what they find, kind of what impact they're having, and that's why you have the surgery here. The interesting thing is the methodology used before this, which was, just rest, treatment, non-surgical options. This is actually pretty typical for bone spurs in kind of the ankle area, but eventually, Bradley Chubb kept talking about a stabbing pain, and think about having that stabbing pain every time your foot hits the ground, and you can't. And eventually, if that persists, that shows you non-surgical options don't work. So, really now, even though if you're very, very lucky, you're talking about 4 weeks. Reality is probably he's going to end up missing 6 to 8. I'd say worst case scenario is he misses 10. But it would not at all surprise me if we're not talking about Bradley Chubb being back until either after that Thursday night mini bye following Cleveland or even after the bye itself in November.
Yeah, Mase, I have my eyes. I guess I'm preparing for much worse than you are. Look, when Bradley Chubb had this surgery done on the other foot, on the other ankle earlier this year, he missed 11 weeks of football. Now, could they have rushed him back if it wasn't just during training camp and the offseason program? Probably, but didn't we just learn don't rush anyone back, especially Bradley Chubb? There should be no rushing him back from this. So for me, that's why I'm saying, okay, I'm taking that 11-week timeline. And sure, you're right. The bone spurs could be not as bad, and the nature of them could make it so he could come back faster, and maybe that's why it's going to be a 6 to 8 week timeline. But for me, I'm seeing 11 games as a minimum, or 11 weeks as a minimum, which would be about 10 games, which would be more than half the season. I'm really just viewing December for when Bradley Chubb comes back. And how big of a blow is this, Mase? Whether it's 6-8 weeks or, they're without him until week 14.
It's not a death blow unless you have another injury there. Now, basically, what's happened is you've evaporated your depth.
Yep.
You're fine starting Malik Reed for the next 6, 8, 10 weeks, however long it goes.
He had more sacks than Chubb last year.
He did. The other thing also about Bradley Chubb, the 11-week time frame of the offseason, is it might have been a lesser time frame if you hadn't had that huge gap between OTAs and camp. Let's say camp had just immediately followed OTAs. It's possible you would have been talking about him having those days in practice that worked him back to full strength coming earlier. He was probably ready for those days to get back to full strength before camp started.
But that's just rehab. I mean, that's something that just needs time to heal. So I personally don't think like the time off that he, because he could still rehab in the building.
He could rehab, but at the same time they didn't have the opportunity to test him out in practice situations, quasi-game situations.
Personally, I don't need that. I don't think it would have been heal first.
Yeah, I know. I don't think it would have been 11 weeks if it had happened during the season, is what I'm saying. Because there wasn't the opportunity for them to say, okay, let's work him up until the end of July. So that's why I think we're probably looking at 6 to 8 weeks kind of in the bullseye. 4 to 10 weeks is kind of the wider range.
Well, I hope you're right, Mase, and we're gonna find out more soon. But I just hope that they've learned their lesson of not to rush him back with this, because let's say we know he's going to miss at least a month, and he's very likely going to go on IR today, probably. So he'll be out a guaranteed 3 weeks. I think it's going to be much longer than that, but it just doesn't make sense to try to bring him back in week 10 and then risk another injury where you can get him close to 100% healthy if he's out until week 14. That's the way I would approach it, because I would just learn from what just happened with him. But credit to Bradley Chubb for playing through this pain, trying to play through it. Obviously, this was huge for the Broncos to get him back, to try and get the Vaughn and Chubb duo back, and also big for Bradley. Yes, the Broncos did pick up his fifth-year option. He's under contract for the next season at 12.8. I believe, for an outside linebacker, so he's going to get paid next year. But Mase, Bradley Chubb could have gotten a big extension, a huge extension. I mean, we just saw the extension TJ Watt got. Now, as of right now, Bradley Chubb wasn't going to get that sort of deal where, what are we talking, $27 million a year, I think is what TJ Watt's getting. But it's not crazy to say if Chubb had come out and in the first 8 games of the season, he had 6 sacks, he probably would be signing a $20 million, 5-year, $100 million deal, 50, 60 million guaranteed, $20 million a year. And now, obviously, that is completely put off to the side now. And if they do want a top contract extension, that number has significantly dropped. And then, of course, for the Broncos, they lose the production. They lose a Pro Bowl player from last year. So just, terrible for both ends of this.
Yeah, and just think about, let's say he misses the next 6 games here, and you're literally talking about a player who will have missed 21 games over 4 seasons, and specifically 21 games in the last 3, because he played all 16 games. And you mentioned Von Miller. That combination, the Miller-Chubb combo, the pairing that was supposed to transform the Broncos defense and get them back to the salad days of resembling what they did in the mid-2010s, in the end, we saw him for 16 games in 2018. We saw him for 4 games in 2019, no games in 2020, and only 1 this year. So you're basically looking at 21 games when these guys had a chance to work together, plus whatever you add on at the end of this season, if and when Chubb returns. But it's unfortunate, and given the injury history, which by the way, it predates him being a Bronco, because he tore his ACL years before the Broncos drafted him.
Senior year of high school.
Yes, so because of that, you're looking at somebody with two ACLs. You're looking at somebody who had other knee issues, who's now had the bone spur issue. I think you'll probably have to think twice before you give him a contract extension.
Oh.
And this change, and
More than twice.
Think about what this changes. It might change your team's desire to sign Von Miller. Maybe you think, well, with Chubb not being as healthy, Von still playing well, we have to make sure Von Miller is back for 2022 and beyond.
Sign him up before the season's over.
Right. And then what do you do with Malik Reed? If he plays well the next few games, are you thinking he is your long-term edge option? Yep. You'll probably see Jonathan Cooper rotate in as well, which gives you a chance to find out more about him. Is he just a preseason flash, or is he somebody that really can factor in long-term? And you want to find out about Reed and Cooper, because if neither of them show that you want them starting for multiple years, or in the case of Malik Reed getting a contract extension, then you're in the draft pool for edge rushers probably next year, probably in the first couple of rounds.
Mase,
all this is on the line.
I believe yesterday Vic Fangio was asked if Malik Reed is a starting caliber outside linebacker. What would be your answer to that?
Yes.
Yep, and that would be my answer too. Now, is he...
what did Vic say?
Vic said, well, I have to look around other teams and see, but yeah, in terms of, his caliber of play, I think he is.
Yes.
And I agree with that. I mean, we saw it last year. He led the team in sacks when Bradley Chubb was still on this team. Now, is he a guy that's going to get $20 million a year, get a Shaq Barrett $18 million a year, and eventually go on and lead the league in sacks? I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that, but is he a good outside linebacker? Yes. So the Broncos are going to have to decide with this. Do they want the potential to have 2 top 5 picks in Bradley Chubb and Von Miller on the edge, or are they, but pay a lot for it and take a lot of risk with both of those guys? Or are they okay with going with the trusty guy, the guy who's good, who's really good, and could be great in Malik Reed, but also, probably a lower floor and a lower ceiling than those two guys, but save a lot of money and then use that money at some other position? That's a decision they're going to have to make, because like you outlined, Mase, 3 of the 4 guys that the Broncos have at that position that really play on defense are all up in the air this year in terms of their future. The only guy who you're locked in is Jonathan Cooper. You don't have to worry about him. But the 3 guys who you're most worried about and or not certain about their future, those are the guys that are the biggest ones for your team.
And don't forget with Malik Reed, he's a restricted free agent in the spring. So the tender you give matters. Let's say over the next few games, let's say Malik Reed has to start let's say 8 games. Let's say 8 games.
Okay.
Now until the bye. He starts. Say that he has 6 sacks in those 8 games.
First round tender.
Yes, it's not. The
don't
second
mess
round
around.
isn't enough. So that doesn't mean his price is exorbitant next year, because it's only the RFA tender, but it does mean that you're spending on him. You're spending on Bradley Chubb's 5th-year option. Then if you bring Von Miller back, you're spending on him, and then you're also, frankly, starting to plan what happens beyond 2022. Do you bring Malik Reed back? If he comes out and plays well the next few games, then you have that RFA, that round 1 tender, but I'm thinking long and hard about a 3-year deal for Malik Reed.
Yep. Now,
and if they do that, then and if they do that and they bring back Von Miller, then the decision on Bradley Chubb has been made.
Well, and so really quick to just dive into that, Malik Reed in week 1, when Bradley Chubb was out, played 74% of the defensive snaps. Jonathan Cooper played 28% of the defensive snaps. I kind of expect it to continue to go that way when Bradley Chubb is out. So Malik Reed's going to have a huge opportunity to get 6 sacks in 8 games or something like that. He's going to have an opportunity to be potentially competing with Von Miller for the team lead in sacks. Now, Von already has a 3-sack lead on him, so I don't expect him to catch up. But so you say that the Broncos aren't going to sign all 3 of these guys after this season, is that right?
Well, they'll all be here potentially in 2022 if Von Miller resigns.
Okay. But do you think they would do that? If they keep Bradley Chubb on the 12-8, which they don't have a choice now.
Right.
And they pick up we'll call it $5 million for the first round tender.
I would say there's a good chance all three are here next year, yes.
Okay.
But
and
it's the year after that, it's 2023, where you start having questions.
so then, Mase, is this not a big deal? Is this injury not a big deal in terms of the future of all of these guys and the future of this position? If, well, you already got him locked up for almost $13 million next year is really the prove-it year for him.
Well, not exactly, because like I mentioned, if they decide that they've seen enough of Malik Reed and view him as a long-term guy, then you have a scenario where you could, instead of just giving him the 1-year tender, you, like I said earlier, you add a couple of years onto that, and you maybe get some cap relief in 2022 on Malik Reed's number, get him down, but then have him making more beyond that. You take care of him, and maybe for next year you have a more liberal rotation if all three are there, but the planning at the back of your mind is that in 23, Chubb's walking, Malik Reed becomes a starter, and then you have Von Miller on the other side, presumably still in there, although you may want to have someone developing. You've got Jonathan Cooper, and then someone else in the wings that you've drafted continuing to develop there, but that could be your mix.
In very unfortunate circumstances, this is great news for Von Miller, Mase, because if Bradley Chubb misses 6 games, he could come back the rest of the season and prove that he's a player, and he can get 10 sacks in the final 10 games, and the Broncos feel comfortable signing him up, or at least keeping him for that 5th-year option year and letting Von Miller go. But the odds of that happening, at least right now, how I view it, aren't very high. I think he's going to be able to show maybe 5 games this season, and then are you going to go off a 5-game sample size and say, peace, Von, we got Bradley Chubb? I don't think so. And George Payton's going to have an emphasis on that outside linebacker position, and I don't think he's going to feel comfortable relying on Bradley Chubb to be his number one guy, because how can you? The last time he played 16 games, the only time he played 16 games was in 2018. Then he's played in 4 games, 14 and 1 so far this year. So I really see this, Mase, as being great news for Von Miller, because before the end of the season, the Broncos are probably going to try to lock him down, especially if they're competing. That'll be a reason for Von Miller to stay. So I think this has big implications for potentially more so the long term than the short term here.
Well, what this does is it puts the onus on Von Miller coming back, probably on Von Miller. If Von were struggling, then there would be reasons to think, okay, maybe you don't bring Von Miller back. If Von were struggling and Bradley Chubb were doing well, that maybe Bradley Chubb has become the alpha. But clearly Von is still the alpha, and that means the decision is on him. If he likes the direction of the franchise, likes where they are in December, then maybe you can get a deal done. If he's skeptical about what's coming next, then a deal might be tougher to find between Von Miller and the Broncos. In the short term, that depends on Teddy Bridgewater. If Bridgewater continues to play well and the Broncos say, okay, well, he might be our quarterback for the next 2, 3, however many years, and Von believes in Teddy Bridgewater as he appears to, then I think that's something that kind of gets things set up for Von to re-sign. And similarly, if Bridgewater is not the guy, but there's every indication they're going to make a play for Aaron Rodgers, that too, I think, helps Von come back.
Now, that would probably be he hits free agency, or you don't re-sign him until February. You're not re-signing him in December.
Because you wouldn't know.
Folks.
Yeah, you wouldn't have that plan in place by then. It wouldn't be something where you could wrap your arms around it. Whereas if Aaron Rodgers is traded in February, he'd be traded in March, but we know that a lot of those March trades that are official then happen in February, or in the case of Matthew Stafford, even January, that you agree to terms on him. So you would know. So Von would know that, and I think if it were Aaron Rodgers, then I think Von would probably re-sign pretty quickly thereafter. But again, it would be about whether Von wanted to.
Right. So Mase, I have a couple questions for you about this. Is the Von Miller and Bradley Chubb duo experiment failed?
Yes.
As of now, it is.
It is. It did fail. And it didn't fail because because either one was unwilling. And I don't want to hear the words Bradley Chubb is a bust, because as Tyler Columbus noted on Twitter, and something I've said over the years, you're a bust if you fail just because you're not good enough or your desire isn't there. Like Paxton Lynch is a bust. Right. Jarvis Moss is a bust. If it's injuries that doom you, you're not a bust. It's just sad and unfortunate, but you're not a bust.
Right. And that's why I didn't phrase it that way. But I think you're right. I don't think you can look at this and say that the Broncos using a top 5 pick on Bradley Chubb was successful as of right now. He's going to need to stay healthy, and him and Von Miller together, because that was also a very enticing thing about Bradley. It wasn't just getting a top 5 pick as a pass rusher. It was being able to pair him with Von Miller and leading the league in sacks. Mace, they haven't done that. They haven't they haven't been close. I mean, Bradley has 1 double-digit sack season, and in that time, I believe Von has 1 double-digit sack season as well.
Well, on his way to another, but it looks like it's going to happen mostly without Bradley Chubb.
Yep,
and unfortunately, that means the name Josh Allen is going to
it's never going to go away.
Ring throughout the valleys and hollows of Broncos country.
Yep.
Is it fair to Bradley Chubb? No, but it's something that has to be brought up in this discussion, in part because the Broncos literally had Josh Allen in their midst for a week down in Mobile and decided that they didn't want him at quarterback.
Just like Justin Fields and Mac Jones are always going to be in the conversation when we talk about the pick of Patrick Surtain. Let's hit a super chat to end off this conversation. It comes in from Greg. He says, talk about injuries. Did we sign Micah Kiser as a temporary replacement for Jewell, or will he be behind Strnad? Or maybe will he be special teams? Yes. Well, he's going to just add depth there. To my understanding, Mace. So don't expect him to take a big role this weekend, and also a big role on special teams as well. He's been a special teams guy, and obviously that's a place the Broncos need help. Thank you for the super chat, Greg. And
remember Kiser started 9 games for Brandon Staley last year in Los Angeles.
Yep.
And I think
very comfortable with that.
That's the key thing. He knows what he's doing in the scheme. Had some flashes. That being said, he was available because he was on the Rams practice squad right now. So he's depth. It's good to have him in the building, but Micah Kiser is not coming to save this team, to use the old cliche of John Fox that no one's coming to save us.
Yes.
Any saviors are coming from within and are already there.
Yep, and got a 1-year $600,000 deal, so you're not paying him millions of dollars.
And that's a key thing, is you weren't gonna give someone that you brought in a big contract. I know on the edge people have said, what about Clay Matthews? On the inside, someone suggested to me on Twitter, let's trade for C.J. Mosley. A thing that is key here is all that cap space that you have this year, you carry over to next year. And George Payton does not want to spend much of that cap space filling holes on the roster right now, because if Teddy Bridgewater gets a long-term deal, you're giving him a big contract, so you need the money for him. Or if he's not the guy, but you're making a play for Aaron Rodgers or maybe another veteran who could be available, like a Matt Ryan perhaps, you're going to need that money for that veteran quarterback as well. And so that's why you're not seeing the Broncos look to make moves here that have a huge impact on their salary cap. Yeah. They want that savings to carry over because they're going to need it in the spring one way or the other.
Yeah, and you're just not going to be able to find guys that you're paying $10 million right now anyways. But guys, this Sunday, we've got the coolest tailgate in the country, dare I say the world, over at Empower Field at Mile High. It is going to be awesome. We're going to have all-you-can-eat sexy pizza. We're going to have so many Breckenridge brews there, and you get to hang out with the DNVR fam. And if you want, you can even get a ride from the DNVR bar down to the tailgate and then back after the game to the bar, and all of that for only $30. If you already have a ride to the game and you just want to go to the tailgate for all that pizza, the beer, and to hang out with us, it's $20. You're not going to find that deal anywhere. I mean, it's going to cost you more to park than it is for this entire experience. And guys, it is going to be so much fun. We're going to be doing these all throughout the season, but this one, the very first one in so long that we've been able to have a tailgate, it is going to be popping. So how do you get tickets? Well, go to thednvr.com to get your tickets, or you can go and find the link on our Twitter page. It's our Twin Pete on pinned tweet. There we go. On DNVR Broncos Twitter. Click on that and you can get hooked up with your tickets. It is going to be so much fun, and also just a fantastic deal.
I thought you were going to say Twin Peaks there.
No.
Like the old television show.
Yeah, no Twin Peaks here, Mase.
Yeah, you know what? There are going to be a lot of cans of Breckenridge brews over at the tailgate, in addition, of course, to the sexy pizza. By the way, whenever anyone says sexy pizza, I think of Borat saying, sexy time? Have a sexy time with sexy pizza?
Exactly,
anyway,
with us.
Anyway, but you'll also be able to have a fun time with the cans of Breck brews over there. And those cans probably came from right here in the Denver area, right over in Golden, from our friends over at Ball, as in Ball Arena, as in the aerospace technology company, as in the world's largest aluminum can and packaging manufacturer. And here in the Denver area, at their plant in Golden, they need help. They have floor manufacturing positions for production technicians and other roles available because they need to make more cans. Last year, Ball made over 101 billion cans, including the one in my hand right now.
With a B.
With a B, 101 billion. So Ball is hiring production technicians to make even more cans because they're adding line capacity to their 400-person plant in Golden. The demand for sustainable aluminum beverage cans is greater than ever. And more than that, if you've consumed a beverage in a can, it's been from a Ball aluminum can like my soda right here. And aluminum, it's highly sustainable. 75% of all aluminum ever produced on the earth is still in use. Aluminum is infinitely recyclable, which is why Ball thinks it is the material of the future, It can be reused and remanufactured forever. And so that's why they need help at their plant. Your aunt works there. She raves about the treatment of employees and the atmosphere over at Ball and the workplace culture. So if you want to get in on that, change your career, do something different, and be unstoppable at Ball, check out #WorkAtBall online. And to apply for a position at their aluminum can plant, text Golden to 77222 or go to jobs.ball.com and search for Golden. That's jobs.ball.com and search for Golden, or text Golden to 77222.
You guys have probably been getting ripped off by your wireless carrier for years now, because that's what they do. They get you in with a good deal, and then after 6 months or a year, that good deal is gone, and you are just stuck in a contract. You are stuck paying so much money for your wireless service. But here's a deal that will never go away. It's not just a gotcha deal, and then it goes away. It's $15 a month for cell phone service over at Mint Mobile. $15 a month gets you unlimited talk, unlimited text, and data as well. And then you can get more data if you want, but you'll always get unlimited talk and text starting at $15 a month over at Mint Mobile. And you're saying, well, what's the catch, Zach? Well, there is no catch. It's just the exact same service. Literally, they use the exact same towers as the big wireless companies. They just don't have any stores. No one's going to stores anyways, so you don't need to go to a store to do this. What you do is go to mintmobile.com/DNVR. You sign up. What they do is they send you just a little card in the mail. Comes with a new SIM card. You put that SIM card into the phone that you already have, and boom, there you go. You download an app. You take your own number there. You get to keep your contacts. You get to keep everything on your phone, and boom, you get fantastic cell phone service starting at only $15 a month. If you have a family, you can do this for everyone, and you'll probably be paying less for the entire family plan than you are for just one line. So make sure to check them out over at mintmobile.com/DNVR. I've done it. I have it. It's fantastic service. And guys, it takes just a couple minutes to go online and place your order, and then it literally literally takes a couple minutes once you get it in the mail to put it in your phone, and then you're saving, maybe even near $100 a month for the rest of your life. So check them out, mintmobile.com/DNVR. Well, Mase, we got to look toward the future now, and the future is playing the 0-2 lousy Jets. And there's a game plan to beat these Jets. It's a pretty easy one, but let's hop into our whiteboard, our Wednesday whiteboard, to break it down right now. Kale's pulling it up for us. All right, here we go. First key, coming from Zach. Attack Zach.
That's
Broncos,
Zach with an H.
That's Zach. It should be attach Zach, because that's how it should be.
Attach yourself to Zach. That's your instructions to Von Miller, Malik Reed, and company.
Exactly. Yes, and if you're a fan of Zach Wilson, you may want to detach yourself from him, because this game is going to be rough. Mase, we talked about pass rush a lot in the first segment, and the Broncos pass rush here should be absolutely killer. There's no need for Vic Fangio to drop 7 guys. They should be bringing 7 guys. And even when they don't bring 7 guys, with Von Miller, with Malik Reed, they should still be getting home. And how about Draymond Jones? That's a guy that also needs to step up.
Yeah, and Draymond's had some pressures, but they haven't resulted in sacks yet. I was hoping that he would have a sack in front of his old coach, Urban Meyer, there on Sunday. That didn't quite happen, given some of the pointed words that Draymond Jones had regarding Urban Meyer. But you can get pressure on him, but you mentioned bring 7. You don't always have to bring 7, but maybe you have times where you're showing a 7-man rush and then you're dropping back. You've got edge rushers dropping into coverage, bringing guys from other directions. Generate pressure on him, make him uncomfortable, but also try to confuse him a little bit, and that I think is going to be part and parcel of the pass rush, is making sure it's not straight. It's not a straight up just send everyone in attack. It's give him things to think about, because at this point he's really struggling to read defenses.
Yep.
And part of it is he had a huge leap coming from BYU to the NFL. Of course, last year BYU had that great season, but how many good teams did they play last year? It was a soft schedule because of COVID. I mean, really the biggest challenge that he had was against Coastal Carolina, and he struggled against the Chanticleers on that beautiful teal field in Conway, South Carolina. So I think the growing pains are natural here. And I would also say this. I think the Jets look a lot like the 49ers of 2017, which means it's not a talented roster, and it's a slow build.
Yeah.
It's going to get better. It's going to take some time.
Yep, it is, but don't give Zach Wilson any time back there. Just attack. And before we get to our second one, anyone watching live, I want to know what you think the Broncos need to do to really not just get a win here, but to blow them out. So hit us up in the comment section on YouTube, and we will pull those up. All right, now let's get to our second whiteboard takeaway here, and it is bewilder Wilson. Kind of like goes along those lines, Mase. Make him confused. Don't give him any time to think back there. Now, one of the things that Trevor Lawrence was able to do was the Broncos tried to confuse him last week a little bit. Trevor Lawrence, very cerebral guy. Him and Mac Jones way ahead of the rest of the rookie class in terms of their ability to diagnose a defense and make quick decisions coming into the NFL right now. Zach Wilson, not one of those guys. Like you said, he's coming from BYU. He's extremely physically talented, but still learning the game and very much behind where Trevor Lawrence was. So confuse him and be successful with that and just do that all game. Mase, not only is he going to have Von Miller in his face, you should be changing that defense up on him often, but also he's going to have the extremely lit up, in Vic Fangio's words, crowd there that should just give him a nightmare. Yeah,
you recall back in 2018 when Fangio was still the defensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears, and they had that game plan against the Rams and Jared Goff that confused Goff. Like they were, they were making changes after the speaker had gone off in Goff's ear, so Sean McVay couldn't communicate that to him. And what did Bill Belichick do in the Super Bowl? Exactly what Vic Fangio and the Bears defense did. So I think this is
Didn't
going.
They hold them to like 6 points in that Bears game.
Yeah, and then 3 points in the Super Bowl. So I think it's going to be the same thing in reverse here. Instead of Belichick borrowing from Fangio. I think you're going to see Fangio mimic a lot of what Bill Belichick did with the Patriots defense last Sunday. The circle of NFL life.
Yep, it's
two defensive
tough, Zach
stages
Wilson.
barring from each other.
Yep, exactly. And they got 6 points last week. So again, that would be a very good outcome.
6 points and 4 picks.
I mean, pretty darn good. And
some of those picks weren't close. I mean,
no, he was just tossing them up.
Yeah, it's like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah, and that's exactly what the pressure and confusing Zach Wilson should lead to. I mean, Mase. Well, we'll do this in our Broncos pick'em at the end of the week. And by the way, you guys got to check that out. It's a lot of fun. It's a different piece than what we've done in the past, but we drop it on Fridays or Saturdays, and we go through and pick some games. We also pick a lot of props in the game just to give you an idea of how we think it's going to go. And you can get those odds over at DraftKings Sportsbook as well. All right, let's get to our third key for beating the Jets, and it's establish the ground game. Mase, pretty simple, but the Broncos haven't been able to do this really. Now, Melvin Gordon did hit over 100 yards in the first game thanks to a 70-yard run. Javonte Williams at the end of the game kind of picked up some yards to make his stat line look a little good, picked up over 50 yards on the game. But this is something that is quietly a big concern. And I don't think it's on the running backs. I think it's on the interior of the offensive line and the rest of the offensive line, but really the interior of the offensive line to create some holes. Look, a running back is only going to get 2 or 3 yards after the holes are closed. And if there's no holes, then he's only going to get 2 or 3 yards per carry because that's all he can find. Now, if the offensive line can create 2 or 3 yards of separation and then the running back gets 2 or 3 yards after, then that's when you talk about 4 to 6 yards per carry, and that's what we have not been able to see these first 2 weeks. I don't want this to be a question going into the Baltimore Ravens game and the Pittsburgh Steelers game against those defenses, Mace. If this offensive line can open anything up on the ground, that's going to be scary. We need to see this ground game. As good as Teddy Bridgewater's been, I know that he can be good now. So that's proven. I need to make sure that this ground game is good.
This is the third straight week that you've seen an opponent that had somebody really strong up front. Of course, you had Leonard Williams in week 1, Josh Allen on the edge in week 2, and you've got Quinnen Williams, who had 7 sacks last year and was very, very good against the run in this game. And so Williams, this might look a lot like week 1, where you had the guy on the interior kind of breaking things down from within. Maybe you have Graham Glasgow back on Sunday. I think that would help in particular in pass protection. But we're talking about run blocking here. The holes need to be there on a more consistent basis than they have been. There were a couple of runs on Sunday where I felt like you didn't see the decisiveness from Gordon and Javonte Williams. You know, the hole wasn't there and they didn't flash to it. So it's not completely off of the running backs. They could do a little bit better, but by and large, the gaps that you're looking for have not been there. Broncos need to do a better job of setting that up. And I have to say, I know Vic Fangio kind of talked about opponents you're going to extreme measures to stop the run. I think that's overstating it a bit, with all due respect to Vic Fangio. And I think there are. Is
that him protecting his guys?
A little bit.
Okay.
And I think there are things that his guys up front could do better.
And just to emphasize just how really poor they've been until the fourth quarter, where the game's kind of out of hand and the Broncos have just bullied them all the way. In the very first game against the Giants, Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon averaged 2.8 yards per carry and 2.4 yards per carry. Bad, very bad for the two of those guys. And then in last week's game in the first half, Javonte Williams averaged 2.6 yards per carry. Melvin Gordon averaged 1.6 yards per carry. Very, very bad. A 2.1 yards per carry in the first half for pretty much both of those games. Will not get it done when you're playing good teams. So that's why I want to see it turn around. And like you said, Mace, they have a challenge this week. They're going to have a challenge next week with Calais Campbell. They're going to have a challenge the week after with the Steelers offensive or defensive line. Maybe you catch a little bit of a break, although Carl Nassib and the Raiders front seven is actually looking better than people thought. And then the next week, you turn around against the Cleveland Browns, and you've got Myles Garrett and you also have that former number 1 overall pick. Why can't Jadeveon Clowney?
Yeah.
So just really tough there. I mean, it doesn't get easier. They've had tough tests, but the tests aren't getting any easier coming up. All right, let's.
Well, actually, one thing.
Yes.
First 3 quarters of the game.
Yep.
How many yards per carry do you think the Broncos are averaging?
In both games combined?
Combined, yes.
I'll say 2.5.
3.7, which isn't bad, but that puts you firmly in the bottom 12 teams of the league in terms of per carry average. You want to get that average to about, I think, if you get to 4.5, you're feeling pretty good.
Well, Mase, where does their halftime rushing rank in terms of the rest of the NFL? Because
halftime, there wouldn't be any runs at halftime.
Up until wait, what do you mean? Until halftime.
Okay.
You said up until the third quarter.
I
Right?
said through the third quarter.
Yeah.
Yes.
So up until halftime.
Yeah, because you mentioned the first 3 quarters earlier. That's why I was looking that up.
I mentioned the first. Those were all the first 2 quarters.
Yeah. First half, they're 29th, 2.6 a carry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's when the games have still been in check. The Broncos have kind of pulled away and kind of just dominated in the second half. That's 2.1.
2.6.
2.6. That is very concerning. I mean, the third worst. They've got to get off to a hotter start on the ground without a doubt. All right, Kale, let's hit this last one here. What the Broncos have to do to beat the New York Jets. And Mase, beat down the Jets early.
And I think that starts with not making mistakes. Don't give this team a reason to believe that it can come in here and pull off the upset. So defensively, it's establish your dominance early. Offensively, put the Jets behind the 8 ball. Make them one-dimensional, with that one dimension being Zach Wilson having to go back and look downfield and be confused by the coverages. Don't give this team any reason to believe that this is their day. So come out, bring the sledgehammer early. Get them in a 2-score hole, I'd say probably by early in the second quarter, and then you're going to dictate the terms of the rest of the game.
Yep, exactly. And it kind of goes back to the last one. Establish the run. Get off to a hot start on the ground early. Beat them down. Wear them out before halftime, Mase. And on top of that, not just to give them no hope, because bad teams, when you give them a little bit of hope, they can turn it around and ride on that. But also get your fan base in it. Be up 10-0 at the end of the first. Be up 24-3 at halftime. And then also, I mentioned this yesterday, but dominate the scoreboard like you've dominated the games. The Broncos really have dominated both of these games. The scoreboard has been pretty dominant, but not as dominant as they've actually been on the field. Let's see that reflected. Let's have a 35-6 game in this one. And that's when, if you really want the nation to pick up on you, that's when the nation will, is when they're saying, whoa, Broncos are beating guys by 4 touchdowns.
Well,
now.
The other thing also that comes into play is everyone's excited about this game, but if it goes sideways, people are going to get real nervous real fast because there's still a kind of fan version of PTSD regarding the last 4 seasons of Bronco football. And if the Jets come out early and get some momentum, then people are going to be flashing back to all the frustrations of the last few years. And that's where a home field advantage, believe it or not, can become a home field disadvantage. People start saying, oh no, here we go again.
And you don't want that in your first home game with fans in 2 years.
Exactly. You don't want that, but it would be understandable if you got off to a bad start if people felt that way. It's been a rough go here in Broncos country.
Yep.
And we're all products of our experiences, products of the things that we've done, products of the things that we've seen. So it would be only natural on a visceral level if the Jets did, say, break out to a 10-3 lead or even maybe got to a 13-3 lead or something like that for people to be nervous and saying, oh, no, uh-oh. And you can kind of feel that murmur. Being an Atlanta Braves fan, I know what that sounds like, especially in clutch games. So you don't want to do that.
Rockies fans understand that too.
Yeah, well, they do. So you don't want to have that sense going through the fans in the stadium. You want to allow them to rebuild that confidence.
Yes,
So
and
don't give. So there's a lot of reasons why you don't want to give the Jets reason to hope at the start, and part of them is your own fans.
exactly. And Mase, kind of some news coming out right now from New York, which just builds on everything we said of our keys to this game. Zach Wilson is dealing with a groin injury, but Saleh said he will be a full participant in practice and not worried about him. Just more reason to pressure him, make that groin. You don't want it to act up, but he's going to be a little limited in his running abilities. So get to him, confuse him, beat them down early, give them no hope, and get to 3-0. That is the Broncos formula for doing that. And if you need a formula for taking care of below the belt, well, I've got it just for you. Here's what you do. You go to manscaped.com. You get the Lawnmower 4.0. You get the Performance Package 4.0, because not only we get you the Lawnmower 4.0, but you'll also get the Crop Reviver, which is a toner, the Performance Boxer Briefs, the Crop Preserver, which is a ball deodorant, a travel bag with all your goodies. And guys, I could go on and on about how good this Lawnmower 4.0 is. Sometimes you're a little worried about getting nicked when taking a razor down there. Not with the Lawnmower 4.0, not with their advanced skin-safe technology. You can do it in the shower because it's waterproof. You can do it in the dark because it has a light. You can do it out in the wilderness because it doesn't need to be plugged in. It has wireless charging capabilities, and the battery on this puppy lasts for so long. And if you use the code DNVR over at checkout at manscaped.com, you'll get 20% off plus free shipping. So make sure to check them out, because they have so much more than just all of that as well. They have nose and ear trimmers, which is the Weed Whacker. They've got so much. Check them out over at manscaped.com. Use the code DNVR.
Also, check out our friends over at Solace Meds. They've got some hot deals in September. Of course, it's been hot out there most of the month. Not today, but it's warming back up again. And so hot deals for a hot September at Solace Meds include Can America Gummies, 25% off, Strains Tinctures, 20% off, Rockin' Cartridges, 25% off, Glacier Concentrates, 20% off. And if you head on in to any of their 4 locations, one in Fort Collins, one in Wheat Ridge, one off Broadway in Denver, and just one blocks away from the DNVR Bar in East Colfax. If you go to the locations, you can get a free Solace Bars or King Cone when you mention the DNVR code 20. That's any location of Solace Meds. Head on in, mention that code DNVR20 to get 20% off and a free Solace Bar or King Cone. Here's how you do your shopping at Solace Meds. You go online at solacemeds.com, SOLACE meds.com. View their menu, order online, and then go to your nearest location at your convenience and pick up from there. And of course, if you use that code DNVR20, not only do you get 20% off, not only do you get the Solace Bar or King Cone, but then you let them know that your friends at DNVR thanks you. Of course, there's no better way to support DNVR than by supporting our partners like Solace Meds. So check out Solace Meds, SOLACE meds.com, with 4 locations in Fort Collins, in Wheat Ridge, one off Broadway, and one just blocks away from the DNVR Bar in East Colfax, and get 20% off with that code DNVR20.
And speaking of codes, I've got the best one yet. Code DNVR25 over at Strava Craft Coffee will get you 25% off your first purchase of this delicious CBD coffee. Guys, it wakes us all up in the morning, keeps me going in the afternoon. And one thing that's fantastic about Strava Craft Coffee is, for a lot of people, it gets rid of the coffee jitters because of that CBD infusement. And the CBD also helps relieve aches, pains, headaches, migraines, anything that's going on with your body. It can help relieve. You guys know how beneficial CBD can be. And you get that in a cup of Joe, which is delicious, by the way. They have some great flavors, too. The marshmallow one, delicious. So make sure to check them out over at Strava Craft Coffee. Use the code DNVR25 to get 25% off your first purchase. And then subscribe to Strava Craft Coffee, and you'll get 20% off with the rest of your life on any order made with Strava Craft Coffee. You can have it even delivered straight to your door as often as you want, every 2, 4, 6, 8 weeks, however often you want. It'll just show up at that 20% off. So make sure to check them out over at Strava Craft Coffee and use the code DNVR25. All right, Mase, let's talk to the people and dive into the comment section on thednvr.com. Another benefit of becoming a member, go to thednvr.com. At the top of the page, you'll see podcasts. Click on that. Click on Broncos podcast. Click on the first podcast that pops up. That's our most recent one. Scroll to the bottom, and if you're a member of our family, your comments will magically appear there. Leave one there, and we will get to it on the following podcast. And Mase, let's do that right now. First one coming in from Ohio Bronco Alex. He says, how many points should we score this weekend against the Jets to feel great about our offense moving forward? 27 points and 23 points in our first 2 games is solid, but I want more.
You want more, but I think you're going to be hard-pressed to get more because as much as we've talked about the Jets' offense and the struggles of Zach Wilson, their defense has actually held its own reasonably well. They gave up 19 points and 381 yards to the Panthers in Week 1. But then against the Patriots, obviously with a rookie quarterback in Mac Jones, New England only had 260 yards in Week 2. Now, they had 25 points in large part because you had Zach Wilson throwing picks, a lot of short fields. Nick Folk, of course, had, I believe, 4 field goals in that game. So they were forcing the Patriots to settle for 3. So I think you're fine with this offense if it's basically where it is. And we've kind of talked about 24, 25 points a game kind of being the magic number for this team. Yes, these are shaky teams, but so far you're on track. You're going to need more going forward against some of the better teams, but I think against a Jets defense that appears to be above average, and I think a lot of that has to do with Robert Saleh coming in there from San Francisco. If you get 23 to 27 points again, you're feeling pretty good.
Mase, I totally know what you're saying. You make good points, but Ohio Bronco Alex, it wants to feel great about the offense. So to feel great, 30. If they drop a 30 burger at home, everyone's going to feel real good about this
I'm
offense.
trying to keep the expectations reasonable around here.
27 points. They were close at home against the Jets. Mase, that could even include a pick 6.
Okay, that's fine. See, I'm not factoring that in. I'm factoring in points accounted for by the offense.
Well, maybe it's
So,
37 points with
yeah.
the pick 6. We'll see.
Yeah, like they could have had 30 against the Jaguars. I still think they should have tried to score.
And people just want to see that. And so I think if they get 30 on, everyone's going to feel great about the offense if they're not already.
Yep. We have a username change, by the way.
We do. Fantastic.
Count Locula is now Count Brigula.
I love it. I even forgot that Count Locula was based off Drew. I totally had forgot about that.
The reason why
Count had become his own thing.
Yeah, the reason why I noticed this is I responded to his message on the website last night, and I looked and I know it was Count Locula last night. And today it's Count Brigula. So he's on board the Teddy train, and the Count says, "I hope this isn't a premature name change, but it seems pertinent. What should I eat at my brother's bar for lunch on Friday? I'm heading there as soon as I get to town. Love the Count. I'd go for the jalapeno cream cheese burger myself. What about you?"
Yeah, Mace, you mentioned it in the comment too, but I like that. That's really good. But just add a couple more cheeses and some grilled onions to it, and that's what they call the JCB, or that's what they call the Johnny Burger. You get the jalapeno
Not the Johnny
cream
Bolin
cheese.
burger.
Right, no, it's just the Johnny Burger. You get that jalapeno cream cheese, the 2 other cheeses, and then grilled onions. Count, you're killing me. It sounds so good.
That is so good. Nashville Joey. I heard RK bring up the 2017 loss to the Giants on Sunday Night Football. We were 3-1, and the Giants were 0-5. We played a show the night before in Denver, and Scotty was asked to sing the national anthem at the game the next day. We got to sit in a suite, got to go on the field, and I stood on the sideline with the players as Scotty sang the anthem. As we were walking back to the suite, I looked at him and said, "Dude, I am so stoked. We should easily crush the Giants." Going into halftime and watching Trevor Siemian, sorry, Zach, throw one of the worst pick sixes I have ever seen, I realized I had made a huge mistake, one that I will never do again. The Broncos lost, the season tanked, and it's been downhill since then. I will not look past the team again, as no win is guaranteed. That being said, I'll be at the game, the tailgate, and the bar, screaming my ass off and cheering on our beloved Broncos.
Yeah, I mean, the Broncos should not be overlooking the Jets. Even though they really should beat them, they should be figuring out how much they're going to beat them by, not if they're going to beat them. The Broncos are not, I mean, no team should really overlook any team, but the Broncos aren't good enough to to overlook teams. They just as Melvin Gordon said, if anyone needs any motivation to continue to work hard, even with a winning record right now, just look at the records the last couple of years. They're very bad and embarrassing.
Yep. Exactly. They're not in a position to overlook anybody.
No.
And hopefully when they're in a position to overlook people, they won't overlook people.
Exactly. River Vapecraft, another great name coming in. He says, yo, dudes, I just saw that Justin Simmons has graded out poorly over at PFF. I know the rankings aren't the end-all, be-all, but have you guys seen anything that concerns you? And what's very interesting about this, Mase, is PFF has been the biggest fan of Justin Simmons the past many years.
Yeah. The thing is, sometimes you're looking at zone coverages especially, and you may say, okay, this guy appears responsible. It's actually somebody else. I think what's happening is that they're nicking him for mistakes that are coming from the linebacker position in coverage.
Right.
Guys getting behind the linebackers, and that's led to some open territory. If Justin's playing deep, then it's not his responsibility to get up there. Like, remember, and another example is on the touchdown that Sterling Shepard had for the Giants in Week 1. Justin, he's moving in position to follow another receiver deeper. He's doing his job on that play, and they might have nicked him for that.
And I'm not concerned about Justin right now, but I do want to see the playmaking ability, because you don't pay a guy making the highest paid safety, even if it was just for a couple of months, but now the second highest paid safety, to be really good. You pay him to change games, and so I do want to see that moving forward, and that's something we haven't seen.
But I think also you've had quarterbacks that are avoiding him too.
Yeah, exactly.
I
That's
think
why I'm not concerned, but that's what I need to see.
The word is out on Justin Simmons that you don't want to throw in his general area.
His general area should be like half the field.
Yeah, because if you give him a chance to make a pick, he's probably going to get a pick, and you're trying to avoid turnovers at all costs.
That's what I need to see. I need to see those picks, baby. The great Broncholio coming in. He says, hey, guys, I have a two-parter for you. First, do you think it's possible that they didn't punch it in at the end of the Jags game because they didn't want to expose the special teams even more and possibly give up another touchdown?
Well, that's possible. At the same time,
oh, that would be playing scared. I wouldn't like it.
Yeah, and looking at kind of the numbers, how much time was left, and the chances of a comeback then. If anything, I would have wanted to score to get the kickoff coverage team back out there.
Right, a couple more reps.
Give them some reps, because you score a touchdown, you're up 17 points, you're up 3 scores. They're not making up 3 scores in 60 seconds.
Yep, yeah.
Even if they get a kickoff return for a touchdown.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and then he goes on and says, secondly, Mase described the Jags defense reasonably placed traffic cones. How would you describe the Jets defense? Love everything you guys do. Go Broncos and long live DNVR. Amen.
The Jets defense is young. I mean, in particular, they've got I believe they've got 3 rookie starters in the lineup. It's young. It'll make some mistakes, but they're all over the place, and I mean that in a good way. They pursue, and they're good, and I think they're pretty strong up front. I mentioned Quinnen Williams earlier in this podcast. It's a better defense than people realize, and they were playing some decent ball defensively down the stretch last year as well. You look at that game where they upset the Cleveland Browns and basically cost themselves Trevor Lawrence.
Yep.
That was a terrific defensive performance. So they've got some pieces over there. And the Giants don't have a bad defense either, but I'd say this is probably the best defense the Broncos have seen so far. It's not saying all that much, but it's certainly maybe a half step up in class from the Giants back in Week 1.
Yeah, I agree. Next one from T-Slice in NorCal. Great show as always, boys. Quick question. Can you bring a 5-year-old to the tailgate on Sunday? Flying out Friday morning with my wife and son to go to the home opener on Sunday. It's my son and wife's first time going to Mile High. I am beyond pumped. I believe so. Yeah, I don't think there's any reason why not. We cannot wait to see a T-Slice in NorCal out here in the Mile High City.
Yeah, it's people are going to be having fun, but yeah, I think you're okay bringing the family to that.
Absolutely. Mr. Undrafted says, if each of you were to get a Broncos or sports tattoo, what would you get and where on your body would you get it?
I'm not getting one.
Oh, and that's not the question. If you were.
That's fine. I'm answering the question.
Oh, no.
Look, I have a fear of needles, I understand I have to get him for medical reasons, but I'm not getting him for anything optional. So
Wow.
Yeah.
Boo.
yeah, boo me if you want. That's my answer. I'm sticking to it.
Boo. I would get Tim on one cheek and Peyton on the other cheek.
Tim Tebow?
Yeah, absolutely. Why not?
You're kidding.
He's so much fun. Why would you not get Tim?
Oh, I can think of some reasons that I really don't want to get into here.
Maybe the cheeks would be a little inappropriate place to put those guys.
Well, where would be appropriate? Are you talking about getting the tattoo of them or their numbers?
Something about them. Yeah, it can't just be a number.
Okay.
Too boring.
See, I think the number's kind of nice and vague. That's why I would do the number.
Yes.
Because let's say you're getting him on the butt cheeks. You know, when that ass is getting all wrinkled and shriveling in your 60s and 70s.
You just throw some.
You want to be able to explain
just throw some whitey tighties over it.
Oh my gosh.
Especially when you're getting older.
I mean,
the whitey tighties will do.
Let's go beyond that. You're in your 80s or 90s, and you know you're winding down, and you're in a rest home getting sponge baths. I mean, do you really want the nursing home attendant to see that?
It'll be something to talk about, and they'll probably have seen much worse.
Okay. All right.
Windy City Broncos says 2021 isn't looking good for Chubb, and I just saw he's getting surgery. I'm left wondering what makes sense for next year with his fifth-year option. He's set to make $12.7 million next season, which is on its own might be fine if he returns to form. Of course, then we're in a position of having to re-sign him. It will probably be a much higher price. But do we maybe try extending him on a very team-friendly deal this year, like guarantee him next season at a similar price, but have it as part of a 3-year deal where we can get out easy? Like, I imagine a deal that's $42 million over 3 years with $12 million guaranteed for next season. He gets protection for next season and a chance to heal. Broncos take a small gamble, but maybe get a bargain. I like what you're thinking, Windy City Bronco, but there's no incentive for Bradley Chubb to take this.
Because he's already getting the money guaranteed because he has a fifth-year option. There's literally no reason for him to take this deal.
The only reason he would...
You'd have to throw another $12 million on there probably.
In guarantees.
Right. Because you tear up the fifth-year option and say, okay, instead of $12 million, we're going to guarantee you $24 million.
Yep.
And so... And I don't see the value of that, especially if Malik Reed plays well in the next few weeks. I don't see the value there for the Broncos.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you're giving Malik Reed that type of money if that's the case.
Right. Broncos squared. Watching Teddy throw the ball is an absolute delight. He has throws that have more zip than I anticipated. Any chance one could get a Teddy DNVR shirt and a long sleeved?
I love it. We don't have those right now, but if we get enough interest, I'm sure we can get that figured out.
How about Teddy hoodies?
Oh, I love. How about some Teddy gloves?
Yeah,
that's what we need to work on. Our first set of gloves.
Because I'm thinking about something that is going to stand up when it gets cold. And so if you get the hoodie and you get the gloves, and then when it gets cooler over at Mile High, November and December, you can wear that as your outerwear and you're good to go. Layer up underneath, and then you can show off your Teddy 2 gloves, love.
Oh, man, amazing. Hip Hip Ray says, hey, guys, the conversation you had about splitting reps between Williams and Melvin Gordon, I found to be an interesting one, and it sparked a question. At the beginning of the season, you guys talked about how Gordon was getting paid the most and should be through the number one running back. From a coaching perspective, at what point in the season does the amount of money someone getting paid simply doesn't apply anymore, and you just play the best players on the field regardless? I think this can apply to any position group, but I find this to be intriguing, particularly at the running back and corner position for this team. At what point does the coaching staff just play Surtain and Javonte Williams over someone else? Thanks, fellas. Go Broncos. Well, Mase, I think that we're already at this point. And I think from the conversation that we had earlier about just the running backs numbers, it's not like Javonte Williams is averaging over double what Melvin Gordon is averaging, even if you take Melvin's 70-yard run out. He's not blowing him out of the water. So the coaches, for a longevity standpoint, want to keep this pretty even, but they are at a point right now where, they don't care who's getting paid money. This coaching staff is going to just have the best person play. Yeah,
and of course, Melvin Gordon had those garbage yards at the end of the first half when Teddy kind of looked for him short.
That was a pass, though, right?
That was a pass.
Yep.
But, I mean, right now that means that Melvin has got 72 more yards than Javonte Williams, and he's got 2.4 more yards per touch. And obviously, it's goosed by the explosive plays there. But the fact, and on the run in particular, the fact that Melvin Gordon showed that explosiveness, and as was pointed out by the advanced stats over at NFL.com, it was the fastest gallop anybody had that week. That explosiveness does come into play here, and Javonte Williams hasn't had the chance to show that yet. So I don't think you're at a point where you're saying, yeah, Javonte Williams should be taking carries from Melvin Gordon here. I think the split that they've got right now, they've both touched the football 29 times. I think you ride that.
Yeah.
I haven't seen reason to change that.
Yeah, I agree with that, Mason. When Ronald Darby comes back, though, if Surtain plays the way he did last week, this week, there will be some changes in how that is. I hated that pass interference penalty happened because there was absolutely nothing he could do. Yeah, I totally agree. Next one from Boucher all day. I'll be at the DNVR Tailgate this Sunday. Can't wait to eat the sexiest pizza with the sexiest people and tailgating for this sexy team and celebrating another sexy victory with a sexy fan base.
Sexy time.
My question of the day is, do you guys think Drew is back next year? It feels like no matter if Teddy is here or not, Drew will probably be moving on next year.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Because you can kind of look at potential scenarios here. If, let's say, Bridgewater does enough to where he's getting like at least a short to medium term contract that maybe guarantees the following 2 seasons, do the Broncos say, okay, we're going to bring Drew back for another year? Or are they kind of looking on the horizon and saying, you know what, we could bring in a quarterback and a young quarterback and start the clock again on the development process? I think there's a scenario where you maybe even go and take a quarterback late in round 1 with the intention of that player not playing for 2 years.
Right.
If you see enough from Bridgewater where you can go with him for the short to medium term, but you want to have somebody else developing. And if you do that, you'd want to do that in round 1 to get the 5th-year option. Unfortunately, kind of a thing that hangs over this, Zach, is by picking Drew Lock in round 2, rather than trading back up into round 1 to get him, you don't have that 5th-year option to keep him at relative cost control. And that, I think, hurts the chances of Locke being around next year.
Yeah, I think so as well. And maybe you send Drew somewhere else for, a day 3 pick back to give him a new start and a fresh start, because it just doesn't seem like his future is here.
And if it's not Bridgewater, but if it's an Aaron Rodgers or a Matt Ryan or somebody like that, then I don't think there's room at the end for Drew Lock. At that point, you're looking for a backup who is a clear backup.
Right.
Or again, somebody you're developing long term. Because the problem with Drew Lock is after next year, then he gets to a price point where you can't rationalize that for somebody who isn't starting.
Exactly. Melbourne Broncos says, hi guys, just clarifying yesterday's question on the run game. If you take out Melvin's 70-yard touchdown run, overall they haven't really set the world on fire. I'd like to see a game with steady flow of 5 to 10-yard runs to get the numbers up. Cheers, Melbourne Bronco. That's exactly what we touched on in the second segment, and no better week to do this than this week when you should be able to dictate the game. So I'm right there with you. The running game needs to emerge.
It does need to emerge, and you wonder when the opportunity for that is going to come, because, of course, we talked about how the Jets have been decent against the run, and then you look at the Ravens coming up in Week 4, and they've allowed 72 rushing yards a game so far this season. Mm-hmm. Despite, of course, they faced the Chiefs last week, but you've got Josh Jacobs, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and you've got guys who can run the ball, who can put up some big numbers, and Baltimore's prevented them from doing that. So, and then you got Pittsburgh beyond that in Week 5.
Yep.
So it doesn't get any easier for the Broncos in terms of trying to establish things on the ground in the next 3 weeks.
Jason17, my boys. First of all, I'll be hitting the bar on Monday, not Tuesday. Hope to see y'all there. Unfortunately, I won't be getting the RK special due to the reason of IPAs being absolutely miserably disgusting.
You know what? I'm glad finally somebody agrees with me on this. I mean, an IPA is like, I might as well just have a blowtorch down my throat.
Oh, man. I'm sorry you feel that way.
Yeah, it's just like, too much. Too hoppy.
He says, but I'm looking forward to finally cashing in on a member beer for the first time. Now for Broncos talk. With Jewel out, Sternad will be stepping in as a starter. Any chance we trade for a guy, possibly from the Cowboys or someone in free agency? Well, you found that out this morning what the Broncos are doing and signing Micah Kaiser off the Rams practice squad.
Yeah, and I think people are kind of looking at the big names because that's where
It's
everyone's
sexy.
minds go. It's sexy, like sexy pizza, sexy time, all that. But the bottom line is usually when you make these moves, these are to find depth and to supplement what you have your backup moving up to be a starter. That's almost certainly what it's always going to be. So there you go. And Kaiser has the advantage in knowing this scheme. So I think he'll be helpful.
I agree. Next one from Dan Burke says, hey guys, with Vic saying Browning is still behind in his development at inside linebacker, what do you think about trying him at edge, similar to what the Cowboys are doing with Micah Parsons because of the injury to DeMarcus Lawrence? Browning was pretty darn good at rushing the passer in college, and he can let his natural athletic talent shine instead of having to read and react to plays as an inside linebacker. Plus, if Browning can thrive as an edge rusher, that's probably in the best interest for this team long term, especially now that Chubb's future prospects with this team are shaky. It's easier to find a capable inside linebacker than it is to find a dominant edge rusher, so it can't hurt to see if Browning can be that guy. I think it makes a lot of sense. What do y'all think?
If Jonathan Cooper had not flashed like he did this summer, I think this is something the Broncos would try. But Cooper did so well that if Browning were to move to the edge, he'd be behind Cooper, as well as behind, of course, Malik Reed stepping into the starting lineup. And the other thing is, I think with Justin Hollins, remember they were trying him at all these positions, and then he didn't quite stick, and they let him go. And I think there's some regret for letting Justin Hollins go. You really could use him right now, whether he was at edge or at inside linebacker. If they had consolidated him at one spot, he would probably be a backup team for this team, maybe even starting right now at one of those spots. Instead, they did him a disservice by moving him around. So I think in the same vein, they would do Baron Browning a disservice by moving him around. I think it's best to let him kind of find his way at inside linebacker and not force another position onto him.
I get major DeMarcus Walker scaries when reading this, and that freaks me out. Justin Hollins was the second one to have to go through this. If you want to do this, Dan Burke, and you move him to outside linebacker, then that's it. He stays at outside linebacker for the rest of his career when he's on this team. You don't keep bouncing him inside and outside, especially his rookie year. That's exactly what they did with DeMarcus Walker, and they did it for this exact same reason, Dan, is because injuries would pop up, and they say, oh, we need him outside. Oh, we need him inside. You cannot do that with Baron Browning. Keep him at inside linebacker unless you're okay with him being an outside linebacker for the rest of his time with you.
Yeah, stop the moving around, screwing around with the player stuff. Just let him be at one spot, like you said, Zach. Mike1809, fellas, it's been a minute since I've been able to post. Thanks for killing the content over the past few weeks. Keep it up. You're welcome.
Thank you.
As excited as I am about many things for our Broncos, I'm concerned about our O-line. How would you rank each of our starters, including Muti, both in pass pro and run blocking on a scale of 1 to 10? What's the average run blocking pass pro grade for the line as a whole? How do we stack up to the rest of the league? DMV Army salute.
Well, that's actually probably a good topic to break down in a first segment, going person by person. But Mase, how would you rate on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best, the offensive line run blocking as a whole?
What are we talking about? A C grade being 5 or 7.5, like 75?
Let's do 5 as average. So I guess C is average.
Yeah, I'm giving him a C.
Yeah, I would give him a C minus. So I'd go a 4 here. And what about pass blocking?
Pass protection. You know what? I would have given them a B for week 1. C minus for week 2.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'll go like a B minus right there.
Yeah.
So that's something that the offense can improve on, is their offensive line play.
You know what? I've actually been a little bit disappointed in Bobby Massey so far in pass pro.
Yeah.
I think he could be better.
Yeah.
He has been better in the past.
Yep.
And so that's something that concerns me. And Garrett Bowles, he's not playing like an all-pro right now.
No,
He needs to do better.
He is not. And I think the interior of the offensive line is playing worse than those two. So that just kind of shows you where they are. They can be playing a lot better. Mm-hmm. The Chad, to round things out, says, gentlemen, Bradley Chubb is getting surgery and is going to be out half the season. Is it worth keeping him on the roster? The best ability is availability, and Chubb doesn't seem to have it. I would be inclined to trade him and take almost anything in return. How say you?
You don't trade somebody at their low point of value if you can help it.
Not good investment skills there.
Right now, so I wouldn't do it. The time to trade him would be if he got back in the lineup and did well, but in the weeks where he was sidelined, you saw enough from Malik Reed where you say, all right, I can see a Von Miller-Malik Reed combo with Jonathan Cooper backing them up. I can see that working. And so I think it's something maybe you consider in the offseason if Malik Reed does well, but then Chubb goes back in the lineup and proves he's healthy.
But
right now, no.
That's what I was just going to say is you're not going to be able to have that opportunity to trade him this year even because he's not going to be back and showing enough for a team to trade a second-round pick for him this year. It's going to have to be at the end of this season after the trade deadline, and then you'd be looking about trading him next year.
Yeah, let's face it. If the roads lead back to Aaron Rodgers in the offseason, the Broncos may be thinking in terms of Chubb being a part of that deal.
Yeah, and how...
It would make sense.
But how appealing is he going to be? I mean, it depends on how long he's out and how much he comes in and how dominant he comes back, or else he may...
If he does prove to be a good player when he comes back and he's healthy, then maybe that, in terms of the trade value, takes, say, a second-round pick out of the equation. You can save a little draft capital.
Man, there. I hate that we're talking about this, about a top 5 pick, about a guy that had 12 sacks in like an 8-game stretch his rookie season. What a bummer, but something that's not a bummer.
Well, no, we got 2 more comments coming in.
Oh, well, hit them.
Yep, from Def Woo. My boys. Or you should have said that. Sorry. I don't do as good as you. So,
my boys.
Thank you. Not directly Broncos related, but what are your thoughts on the new NFL taunting rule? Is it a necessary addition to the rule book or just another example of the no fun league at work? I get the rules somewhat, but I also think the sports world is a better place with villains. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of the no fun. And I heard Ron Rivera talk about it yesterday, and he said it's to prevent bigger outbreaks from happening, from retaliation happening. So that's what the NFL is saying. To me, yeah, it's just no fun.
It is. And you know what? Sometimes things are going to happen. It's an aggressive game, and you've obviously changed how aggressive you guys can be in gameplay because of fines for various types of hits and so forth. So I feel like you have to leave some of that edge in it. I'm okay with that. But then again, I'm somebody who looks fondly on things like Terrell Owens putting the ball on the star in Dallas 21 years ago. And then Emmitt Smith doing the same thing in return, and then when T.O. does it, tries to do it again, he ends up getting knocked off the star, and all hell breaks loose. I love that kind of thing. That's fun.
And let's speak of your fondness here from Broncos Only. It says, I'm so excited to watch the Broncos take on the Jets this Sunday. I've seen the Jets against the Broncos once before on October 3rd. Don't look it up, Mase.
I know. No,
October,
I know.
As he's typing on his keyboard. How can I trust him?
I'm looking up another part of the story. I know the answer. This is easy.
So who... Or, Mase, can you name the franchise-altering tragedy that occurred that day?
Yeah, it was Terrell Davis getting hurt.
Right.
When he was trying to make a tackle after an interception.
Yep.
And then what happened after that, that's what I was looking up here. That night, Michael Silver, reporter now with NFL Network, then from Sports Illustrated, he had dinner with some Bronco players who were not named, and at one point in the meal, somebody said, quote, "We're finished," unquote. Oh. And then a few days later, on the cover of Sports Illustrated, there's a picture of the Broncos. I think it's Terrell Davis getting tackled, and the big quote in the headline, "We're finished."
Yikes!
At 0-4.
Oh, yikes! And they were.
And the article, I'm reading this from a story, there was a scene where a player pointed to a barrel of microbrew vats over at the Chop House and said, quote, See that big tank on the right? That's where I'm headed. Another player stood up during dinner, put a fork to his chest, and yelled, quote, "We're done," unquote.
Oh, my gosh. Wow.
Oh.
That is brutal. Brutal, but something
and Silver said 15 players had similar sentiments to one player saying, quote, "We're finished."
Oh, wow. Yep,
Yes.
that's,
But-
I mean, they were right.
Yeah, but, this team isn't finished this year.
It
Far
certainly
from
isn't.
finished.
But this pod is pretty much finished. But if you don't want to be finished with your career and your education, make sure to check out our presenting sponsor, MSU Denver Online. They are the new urban online university with learning outcomes equivalent to face-to-face courses. And whether you're online or on campus, it's all the same degree to them. You get the same degree, the same quality of education. It doesn't matter where you are. So make sure to check them out over at MSU Denver Online. And Mase, that'll do it for us today. Thank you all so much for tuning in live. Thank you all so much for tuning in on the podcast section. Thank you all for all of your interaction. We will be back with you tomorrow to break down, will the Broncos win? Will the Broncos cover the spread? Will the rest of the AFC West win this week? We've got a very awesome preview show tomorrow, so stay tuned. We'll be going live in the morning, so turn on those alerts. Hit us with the thumbs up on your way out. We really appreciate you guys rolling with us. We'll talk to you tomorrow.